In a quiet corner of a small park nestled within a bustling city, an elderly man sat each morning. No one knew his name. No one asked. People simply passed by as if he were part of the weathered wooden bench or the early breeze whispering through the trees. His name was Marcus Harris, a former soldier who had fought in Vietnam. He returned in silence, carrying wounds no one could see, and a service dog who once stood by him through life and death. Now he lived alone. No accolades, no medals on his chest, just memories and a faded green army cap to remind him of who he once was. Each morning he came to the park out of habit, not to seek conversation but to find a bit of peace. A fleeting sense of belonging in a world that had grown colder and quicker to forget those who once protected it. To many, he was just some old black man. But one Saturday morning, when a surprise police sweep rolled through and suspicious eyes began to focus on him, Marcus Harris, the man forgotten by society, stopped the entire city in its tracks. Because minutes later, a service dog would run toward him not to attack, but to kneel at his feet as if greeting a past that never truly faded. That morning, like always, Marcus sat quietly on the stone bench, hands resting on his knees, eyes gazing through the leaves casting shadows over the lake. But the calm was soon broken by the thudding of boots and the crackle of a police radio. 3 officers approached. One was clearly the youngest, his face still lacking experience, but his eyes already heavy with bias. They asked for ID. Marcus replied politely that he had nothing but an old wallet and the key to his rented room. He had nothing to hide. But they didn't care. One officer reached for the radio and called for backup. "We've got a suspicious individual, potentially dangerous vagrant," he said loud enough for the whole park to hear. Bystanders began to stop. Some pulled out their phones. An elderly couple stood still unsure. A child tugged at his mother's hand, whispering, "Mom, why are the officers yelling at that man?" Marcus didn't move. He didn't protest. He wasn't angry. Just calm and aged stillness belonging to a man who had seen war, who had survived death and was now being treated like a threat because of his skin and because he was too quiet for anyone to truly see. In modern-day America, sometimes, suspicion still arrives before compassion. A hush fell over the park like a heavy blanket, but it wasn't the peace of serenity. It was the weight of unspoken judgment. Marcus made no threatening move, but the young officer's hand still rested lightly on his holstered weapon. People began whispering. Some stepped back. A few raised their phones higher. Others turned away as if this were just another day nothing worth caring about. "You need to vacate the area now," one officer barked. "This is a public park," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse with age, calm, not angry, a simple reminder of the rights people often forget. "We have the authority to remove suspicious individuals," another officer interjected, his gaze fixed on the fraying jacket Marcus wore. The green army cap dropped silently to the ground as Marcus stood and no one bothered to pick it up. A middle-aged woman nearby spoke up. "I see him here every morning. He hasn't done anything wrong." But her voice was small, like a single drop in an ocean of prejudice. And just then another police cruiser arrived. The rear door opened. A large, muscular K9 stepped out. The command came from dispatch: "Secure the area. Release the tracking dog." Marcus stood still, unaware that within seconds his life and how the world saw him would be forever changed. The K9 was named Max, a Belgian Malinois with a careful, calculated gait. His eyes were sharp, trained to show no emotion. He was a weapon, not a pet. Max had participated in dangerous operations before, but today his task was simple: identify a threat. The officer pointed at Marcus and shouted, "Go!" Max sprinted across the grass. The whole park held its breath. A child burst into tears. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply stared at the charging dog, his eyes blurring. And then, the unimaginable happened. Max stopped just a few steps from Marcus. His nostrils flared. His head tilted to one side, then slowly, hesitantly, he stepped forward, not like a predator, but like a child recognizing someone in a crowd. Then, he sat down. He slowly looked up at Marcus. His eyes brightened and he let out a low growl, not of warning, but the soft sound he used to make when being petted. Then, like memories rushing back, Max leapt into Marcus's chest, nuzzling him, trembling with joy. Marcus fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around the dog.
"You..."
"Max," he whispered. And in that moment when a trained canine refused to attack and instead bowed before an old man, the entire park stood still. No one spoke. No one dared to interrupt that sacred moment. Because in Max's eyes, this wasn't a homeless man, not a threat, but his former handler, a man who once saved his life. Family. The scene before them was beyond belief. The young officer, the one who had just ordered Max to attack, stood frozen hands at his sides, confusion plain on his face. He didn't understand what was happening, but Max did. And with the pure instinct of loyalty, Max shattered every prejudice in the air. A few in the crowd began to clap hesitantly, then louder. A man stepped forward, removed his cap.
"You're a veteran, aren't you? I'm sorry, I didn't see that."
A little boy pushed through the crowd, holding out a small cloth American flag.
"Can I give you this, sir?"
And Marcus, still kneeling beside Max, let silent tears fall onto the familiar fur that once followed him through war.
"I thought I lost him,"
he choked. And I thought I had lost the world too. At that moment, a senior officer arrived. Unlike the others, he looked like someone who had lived long enough to understand the cost of war and the injustice of peace. He bent slightly, voice low and solemn. "We owe you an apology, and we owe many others like you the recognition they should have had long ago." Silence fell again, but this time it was a silence of awakening, of regret, and of a slow but real turning point. Marcus didn't need a medal to be honored. He just needed a dog and embrace. And a moment when the world finally listened. As more people sat down around the old bench where Marcus once sat alone every morning, he looked up, gently stroked Max's back, and took a deep breath. We were a team. He began, voice trembling but steady. Me and Max. On the other side of the world, where the heat could melt sanity, where one wrong step could be your last. He spoke of silent night patrols, deafening explosions, and how Max would charge into danger to sniff out mines, saving not just one life, but he also spoke of those who didn't return, of a best friend who fell right beside him, of the greatest fear not death but returning home and being forgotten. I survived, but I didn't really live, Marcus whispered. No one wants to hear the story of a black old man jobless carrying a past society chose to erase. An elderly woman held his hand. My brother was a soldier too. He never told us anything. But now I understand. A young white student with glasses stood up. I studied war history in books, but today I saw war in the eyes of someone who lived it. Marcus's story, once a whisper lost in the noise of the city, had begun to spread like an ember burning quietly for years now, fanned into flame by the breath of empathy. No one saw him as a stranger anymore. They saw him as living proof that scars aren't just on the body, but carved into the silence we refuse to hear. The senior officer who had witnessed countless investigations, confrontations between law and humanity took a few steps forward. Before dozens of watching eyes and the lenses of phones recording every second, he removed his hat and bowed deeply to Marcus. Mr. Harris, he said, his voice restrained and solemn. We were wrong. Not just today, but for a long time. This society has made people like you suffer in silence. We forgot that not all heroes wear shining uniforms or bear polished nameplates. Some carry scars and humility in place of rank. Applause echoed through the park. But this time, it wasn't for drama. It was for understanding. A female reporter stepped closer, raising her microphone. Mr. Harris, would you like to say something to those who are watching this unfold? Marcus looked directly into the camera, his gaze unwavering. I don't need an apology for myself. But if today you've learned to look again, not just to see a black man sitting in a park, but to see the human being behind that, then I believe there's still hope. He turned to Max and offered a soft smile. Because if a dog can remember who loved it, then people should be able to do the same for each other. In the crowd, someone wiped away tears, another placed their hand over their heart, and someone perhaps for the first time wondered, have I ever walked past someone like Marcus and seen nothing at all? Within 48 hours, the video capturing the moment Max recognized Marcus had gone viral. The hashtag salute. Marcus flooded every platform from Facebook to TikTok, from local broadcasts to national political pages. No one could ignore the image of a black veteran being profiled and mistreated. Until a service dog spoke the truth, humans refused to see. Morning news shows quoted Marcus, I don't want pity. I just want to be treated like a human being. That simple yet powerful statement was shared millions of times and later painted on a mural by art students in the center of the city. On Capitol Hill, a state senator himself, a veteran, proposed the Marcus Act, a bill to expand support services for homeless veterans, guaranteeing dignity and protection for those who served. Police departments across the country launched retraining sessions focused on unconscious bias and cultural empathy. Schools invited veterans to speak so students could experience living history, not just read it from dry textbooks. And during a special national television interview, Marcus sat calmly, one hand resting on Max's back, and said quietly, if I had to lose everything for this country to finally learn how to see each other with our hearts, then maybe I didn't lose anything at all. 3 months after the incident in the park, an unexpected announcement was made by the Department of Defense. Marcus Harris, Marine Corps veteran, once lost in the Sista, would be honored at Arlington National Cemetery in a ceremony attended by Pentagon officials, veteran organizations, and national media. It was a rare tribute not based on rank, but on a long overdue correction. That day the wind was still. Hundreds lined the walkway not because they were asked to, but out of gratitude. Marcus walked slowly, his old military cap in hand, beside Max, now officially retired, wearing a service medal on his collar. An honor guard stood at attention as he approached the heart of the memorial plaza. The ceremonial commander raised his head and declared, "Today we do not only honor a soldier. We restore a piece of history that had been forgotten. Marcus Harris. This nation owes you a thank you. It should have said long ago." The haunting notes of taps echoed, but this time not as a farewell. It was a calling, a recognition, a name returned to the memory of a nation, and then something unprecedented. The honor guard halted their march. The entire grounds observed a full minute of silence, not to mourn death, but to welcome the return of a man to the collective heart of a country. After the ceremony at Arlington, people expected the story of Marcus Harris to fade, like every viral headline before it. But it didn't. A month later, a new chapter was added to the state curriculum, honor and forgetting a lesson about soldiers who came home but were never welcomed. Marcus's story became a living example of courage and the dangers of human complacency. Over 200 cities across America began hosting Homeless Veterans Day, providing temporary housing and mental health support to those once left in the shadows. A military museum in Virginia unveiled a new exhibit, Marcus and Max: The Silent Salute, where visitors could watch the now famous video, read old letters, hear voices, and reflect on the lives of those who once served and were forgotten. And Marcus. He chose to live quietly in a small home gifted by the city. Each morning he walked Max around the neighborhood. He didn't need recognition or greetings from strangers. He just wanted to walk without being suspected, to breathe as a man in the country he had once sacrificed everything to protect. One day, a young boy ran up and asked, "Or why did you forgive all the people who did you wrong?" Marcus simply smiled, patted Max on the head, and replied, "Because if I don't forgive, then this story ends with me. But I want it to start with you."